All right, let's do this. Top 5 unsolved mysteries of the UK. We're diving in head first.
Head first into a mountain of articles and theories and speculation, huh? I'm ready.
You better be. I mean, we're talking cases that have stumped everybody, from armchair detectives to, well, the actual pros.
Right, the ones getting paid to solve these things.
Exactly. So buckle up, because we're going to break it down case by case. And where better to start than with? Well, Madeleine McCann.
Yeah, a case everyone remembers, right? I mean, it's etched in our minds.
May 2007, a family vacation in Portugal and Tale. Poof, a little girl vanishes.
Vanishes from her bedroom while her parents are, right there.
Just steps away having dinner. It's every parent's worst nightmare.
And it grabbed the world's attention. Headlines everywhere, that little girl's face.
Yeah, I remember it so clearly. Everyone was just waiting, hoping for good news. But
nothing. You think about it. A huge investigation, so many leads, years, and still nothing. It's baffling.
It really is.
Yeah.
So let's back up a bit. The early days of the investigation. Kind of a mess, weren't they? What went wrong?
Well, a lot of things, really. The crime scene, for starters, securing it was, let's say, not their strong suit.
Right, I remember hearing about that.
And then communication. Language barriers, confusion. It was chaotic.
And of course, there was the whole, parents becoming suspects thing.
Yeah, that was a huge cheat deal. Madeleine's parents, Kate and Jerry, officially considered suspects by the Portuguese police.
Arguidos, right?
Yeah, that's the term. And, can you imagine dealing with the disappearance of your child and then being treated like you did it?
Unthinkable.
Absolutely. And, while they were cleared eventually, that initial suspicion, it really hung over everything.
Cast a shadow over the whole investigation, you think?
For sure. Some people argue that valuable time was lost chasing that wrong lead when they should have been looking elsewhere.
Wow. So already we've got this incredibly tragic event, and then, almost like a plot twist in a movie, the parents are suspects.
It is a bit like that, and then it gets even wilder because over the years, so many theories have popped up.
Oh, I know. It's like everyone has their own idea of what happened. So lay it on us. What are some of the main theories?
Well, one of the big ones is child trafficking. Sadly, the Algarve had and still has a history of that kind of activity.
So organized crime.
Possibly. But the evidence for it in this case is, it's thin.
So maybe people just, wanted to believe it was something more complex than a random act.
Maybe. It's hard to say. But then there's the, what if it was just someone who saw a chance, an opportunity? That's chilling, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
A predator who just happened to be there, saw an open door, and God, that's terrifying.
And it's definitely a possibility. We can't rule it out. But again, no hard evidence, just theories. Which brings us to
2020. A new name, Christian Bruckner, convicted sex offender in the area at the time.
Suddenly there's a prime suspect, someone concrete to focus on.
Did that lead anywhere? Did we get closer to the truth?
Well, as of now, he's still the main suspect, yeah. But the case is far from closed.
So, more waiting.
It seems so. And, all this time, Madeleine's parents are living with this not knowing. It's heartbreaking.
Absolutely. I mean, imagine the torture of not knowing what happened to your child.
These cases, they're not just puzzles, are they? There are real people, real families shattered by this.
So true. And speaking of cases that just refuse to be solved, our next stop takes us from Portugal to, the world of British aristocracy. Lord Lucan, now, that's a name that screams scandal.
Oh, yeah. It's like a high society thriller, money, privilege, a brutal murder, and then poof. The main suspect just vanishes.
Vanishes into thin air.
November 1974, scene is set, Belgravia, one of the fanciest parts of London. Lord Lucan disappears right after a truly awful crime.
His children's nanny, Sandra Rivet, bludgeoned to death.
And his wife, Veronica, she's attacked too, but manages to escape. And she's the one who points the finger right at her husband.
So now we've got a lord, a titled guy, on the run for murder. It's like something out of a tabloid.
Oh, it was huge. Everyone was talking about it, and then the clues start coming out, and it just gets weirder.
Right. Like, Lucan's car turns up abandoned, covered in blood.
Yeah.
But no Lucan. So what happened?
That's the million-dollar question. Nobody... So naturally, everyone's got a theory. Suicide. Faked his own death.
Escaped with the help of his rich friends.
Exactly. The rumors were flying. Secret flights out of the country, hiding in some mansion in our hep. Who knows where?
I remember hearing about supposed sightings of him all over the place.
Yeah, from Australia to Africa, right. He became this, almost mythical figure.
A ghost of the aristocracy. So did he pull off the ultimate escape? Or was there a darker ending?
Officially, he was declared dead in 2016, but questions still linger. No definitive answers.
A classic unsolved mystery. Well, from the world of high society, we move to a very different kind of public figure. Jill Dando, a beloved TV presenter. Her murder. It shocked the nation.
It felt different, didn't it? Like an attack on innocence, almost. April 1999, in broad daylight, she's shot dead on her doorstep in Fulham.
Just like that. Gone. And she wasn't some, controversial figure. She was Jill Dando. Everyone loved her.
Exactly. A familiar face, someone you felt like you knew. It's like, if it could happen to her, it could happen to anyone.
The public was outraged. The pressure to find the killer was immense.
And they did make an arrest, Barry George.
But he wasn't convicted, right?
No, his conviction was overturned. Problems with the evidence. Forensic stuff they used against him wasn't reliable.
So back to square one.
Yep. Barry George walked free in 2008, and we were left with no real answers.
So who did kill Jill Dando? A stalker? A disgruntled viewer? Was it connected to her work as an investigative journalist?
People even threw out organized crime as a possibility. But with no clear motive and no solid evidence, the case just sits there, unsolved.
It's unsettling, isn't it? That someone so public, so well-loved, could be murdered in such a brazen way, and nothing. No justice.
A grim reminder that these things happen, even to people you think are untouchable.
It's true. Well, our next stop takes us back to 1986, and to another chilling disappearance, Susie Lamplugh, a young estate agent who just vanished.
And it makes this case so scary is that it happened during like a normal workday, something we can all relate to. Going to a meeting.
July 1986, Fulham again. Susie sets off to meet a client, a Mr. Kipper, for a property viewing. And that's where it gets strange because, well, Mr. Kipper never existed.
Yeah, that's creepy, right? Like, was this planned? Or did someone just make up a name on the spot? We don't know.
And then her car's found later, abandoned, purse, keys, everything still inside, like she just stepped out for a minute.
It makes you think she went with someone willingly, believing it was a legit meeting. But Mr. Kipper not being real, it points towards something sinister.
And then there's John Cannon, convicted murderer, released from prison just days before Susie disappears.
And he looks a lot like the sketch of Mr. Kipper, and was even nicknamed Kipper in prison.
The pieces seem to fit, right?
They did. But even with all that, even after news searches years later, there wasn't enough to charge him.
So frustrating for Susie's family, I imagine, to know who likely did it but not be able to.
Exactly. And the public, too. Everyone wants answers.
Speaking of answers, or lack thereof, our last stop for this part of our deep dive takes us back to 1931 to Liverpool, the murder of Julia Wallace, a real head-scratcher.
Oh, yeah. This one's got it all. A brutal murder, a husband who becomes the prime suspect, and then there's this mysterious phone call. Buckle up. This is a wild ride.
Okay, set the scene for us. What happened?
Picture it. Liverpool, 1931, winter. William Herbert Wallace, he comes home to find his wife, Julia, murdered in their living room.
Not exactly a warm welcome home. So what did the scene look like?
Brutal. Beaten to death, signs of a struggle. This was personal.
And as always seems to happen, the husband becomes suspect number one.
Right. Classic scenario. But here's the twist. 2 days before the murder, William gets this weird phone call at his chess club. Guy calls himself R.M. Qualtrough.
Qualtrough.
Yep. Wants to meet William the next evening, some address, talk about insurance, blah, blah, blah.
Sounds routine enough. So what happened? Did they meet?
William goes to the address and it doesn't exist. Spends the whole evening looking for this Qualtrough guy, a complete wild goose chase.
So what was that all about? A real lead, a different suspect, or a clever alibi cooked up by William?
That's what everyone was trying to figure out. The police. They thought William made the whole thing up to cover his tracks. He gets arrested, charged with Julia's murder.
Seems pretty open and shut, except
his conviction gets overturned on appeal. Evidence was too weak. Reasonable doubt. William walks free.
Wow. So we're back to square one again. Who killed Julia Wallace? Was it the husband, after all, with a really elaborate scheme? Or was Qualtrough real?
Or was it someone else entirely, someone we haven't even considered? This case, it just eats at you, trying to figure it out.
It really does. And that, my friend, wraps up the first act of our deep dive into the UK's most baffling unsolved mysteries. We've gone from sunny Portugal to the streets of London, from missing children to murdered wives.
And with every case, more questions than answers.
Exactly. But hey, that's what keeps us coming back, right? The intrigue, the mystery, Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll dig even deeper into what makes these cases so captivating.
Back again for more Unsolved Mysteries. I have to admit, even I'm getting a little creeped out with all these cases.
Yeah, it's a lot, isn't it? And yet we're drawn to them. I mean, people are fascinated by unsolved mysteries. Why do you think that is?
It's like a puzzle, isn't it? We want to figure it out. Our brains hate loose ends, you know? We want to connect the dots, find the missing pieces.
Right, like those whodunit games. You're always trying to guess the killer. But I think it's more than just curiosity, isn't it? There's a human element here, too.
Oh, absolutely. We feel for the victims, for their families. We put ourselves in their shoes. Imagine what they went through.
And it's like it could happen to anyone, right? That's the scary part.
Exactly. We see these stories, and it reminds us that life is fragile, things happen, and sometimes there are no easy answers.
And then there's the media. The
Yeah.
way these cases are reported, it just adds to the whole mystique.
Oh, for sure. Think about Lord Lucan. All those sightings all over the world, the rumors about his escape, it turned him into this almost legendary figure.
Right, like a shadowy figure, always just out of reach.
Exactly. Did that help or hurt the investigation? Who knows? But it definitely captured the public's imagination.
And it's not just Lucan. The media plays a huge role in all these cases. They can bring attention to them, keep the pressure on to find answers.
But there's a danger, too, of sensationalizing things, focusing on the drama instead of the facts. And that can sometimes hurt the investigation.
True. And what about the families of the victims? I mean, we're over here fascinated by the mystery, but they're the ones living with the real consequences.
Absolutely. Imagine not knowing what happened to your loved one. Were they kidnapped? Murdered? Did they suffer?
And for some families, it's even worse because they're become suspects themselves. Think about Madeleine McCann's parents.
Awful. Dealing with the loss of their child and then being treated like criminals. It's adding insult to injury, you know?
It's a reminder that behind all the theories and the headlines, there are real people who have been deeply affected by these crimes.
Right. And sometimes it feels like we forget that. It's easy to get caught up in the puzzle, but we have to remember the human cost.
So true. Well, I don't want to end this on a completely somber note. There have been some positive developments in recent years, haven't there?
Oh, definitely. Technology, for one, DNA analysis has revolutionized cold case investigations.
Right. Like they can solve cases now with just a tiny bit of DNA. Amazing.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it? And it's not just DNA. Artificial intelligence, facial recognition software, it's all helping to crack cases that were once considered unsolvable.
It's like something out of a sci-fi movie.
I know. But it's real. And then there's the power of, well, people. Online communities, people coming together to share information, analyze evidence.
Almost like amateur detectives.
Exactly. And they're actually making a difference, helping to solve cold cases, bringing attention to those that have been forgotten.
That's pretty amazing. But of course, there are risks too.
Wow.
Misinformation can spread quickly online. People can jump to conclusions.
True, it's a double-edged sword. But I think it shows just how much people care about these cases, about finding justice.
And let's not forget the organizations out there, the ones dedicated to solving these mysteries, like Missing People, for example. They're the ones who keep pushing, who never give up hope.
Yeah, and they provide support for the families, which is so important. These families are going through something unimaginable, and they need all the support they can get.
Well said. It's easy to get caught up in the intrigue, but it's important to remember the human side of these cases.
Always.
Back for the final act of our deep dive.
We've spent the last 2 parts, well, kind of swimming in some dark waters, right? These unsolved mysteries, they stick with you.
They do, yeah. Complex cases, heartbreaking stories. We've talked about the impact on families, the investigators, even how the media shapes the narrative. But now, for this last part, I want to shift gears a bit. Focus on hope, maybe. Because even with all this darkness, there are people out there fighting for answers.
That's right. Some mysteries might stay unsolved, yeah. But we're making progress. Technology, new techniques, it's giving us a fighting chance.
Okay, so let's talk tech. Forensic science has come a long way. I mean, DNA analysis, it's like magic sometimes.
It really is. I mean, a tiny sample, a drop of blood, a hair, and boom, you've got a lead. Something they couldn't have dreamed of a few decades ago.
I saw this documentary, right? They solved a cold case from, like, years ago because the killer's DNA showed up in one of those ancestry websites. A distant relative.
It's amazing what they can do now. And it's not just DNA. Artificial intelligence, algorithms, they're helping investigators see patterns, connections they might have missed before.
Like a superpowered detective partner.
Exactly. But tech isn't the only thing changing the game. There's also, well, us.
Us.
The public. Online communities, people coming together to share information, analyze evidence, crowdsourcing justice, almost.
It's fascinating, right? But kind of risky, too. I mean, anyone can post anything online. What about misinformation?
True, it's a balancing act. Information needs to be accurate, ethical, but it's also amazing how much these cases resonate with people. They want to help.
And they do help. There have been cases cracked wide open thanks to internet sleuths.
For sure. And then there are the organizations dedicated to these cases. Missing People, the National Crime Agency. They're the ones who keep pushing, even when everyone else has given up.
It's their job, yeah.
Yeah.
But you can tell it's more than that. They believe in what they're doing. Every victim deserves justice. Every family deserves closure.
Absolutely. And they're making a difference. Cases are being solved. Families are finding answers. It's inspiring, honestly, to see that kind of dedication.
It gives you hope, right? That even when things seem impossible, someone's out there fighting for the truth.
Exactly. It's about resilience, about never giving up. And even if the answers never come, the act of searching for them, of remembering the victims, it matters.
It says, we haven't forgotten you. You mattered. And maybe, just maybe, that continued effort, that belief, it'll make a difference. Maybe one day, these mysteries won't be so mysterious anymore.
That's a great thought to end on. There's always hope, always a chance for the truth to come out.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time for us to resurface from this deep dive. It's been intense, fascinating, but heavy.
We've gone to some dark places, yeah. Explored cases that are both captivating and, well, disturbing.
But we've also seen incredible resilience, amazing dedication, people fighting for justice, for answers, for those who can't fight for themselves.
And that's something worth remembering. The power of hope, the importance of never giving up on the truth.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So to our listeners, we leave you with this. Stay curious, keep asking questions, and never underestimate the power of a single voice in the pursuit of truth. Until next time, folks.